Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Tuesday's live stream artist chat. How's everyone doing? Yeah? Okay. This week I am, I'm always excited to talk with my artists, but we're being joined by a guest that we haven't seen in the studio for a while now, not just because it's closed. This is a person, an artist, a musician, an activist, a community creator who brings so much joy to our studio space when she is able to be there. Her name is Cora Reid. Now, some of you might know her as a singer and a songwriter. Others might know her from the amazing activism work she does in her work in anti-Black and anti-systemic racism in our community, tirelessly engaging in dialogue with the people who can make change, knowing that she herself is also a change maker. And if you've ever had the pleasure of being in the living room space while she is hosting an epic open mic night, then you might see an entirely different side of her, as the whole space full of beautiful, fabulous people are moved to song, to music, to storytelling, to sharing their hearts with one another in such an honest and extraordinary way that people leave feeling elevated, full of life. But I see Cora is there, and without further ado, why don't we bring this fabulous woman on so we can have a chat. Let's go live. Cora Reid.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to see what's happened to my camera. I think I have to. You're seeing my seedlings. There I am. How are you? I'm using my phone. How are you, love?
I am, I am okay.
Okay, if you can help me, bear with me. I'm using my telephone, like most. There we go.
There we are. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, love. Oh my God, that introduction was that's a blessing. I'm happy that you think that of me, love.
I know that of you. Beautiful things happen wherever you go. And you know what, before we get into this, for folks who may not be familiar with you or what you do or who you are, could you introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit more about what you do?
Okay, I can do that. When I talk about myself, that's a hard thing. It's easier for me to just do it than to talk about it. I feel like there's such a sense of ego. And that isn't ego. That is just, you should know who you are. I really wish that I could put out there that I am the most confident, brilliant person in the world, but I'm still growing in that, like I think everyone else on this planet. So when you ask me questions about what I do, I go, wow, I do a lot. And I probably should work on that. I probably should work on
One thing that came to my mind when I was trying to think of how I could describe you was, well, what doesn't Cora do? Cora,
oh my God,
you are a very busy woman.
Yes.
Just,
oh,
with such passion infused with anything. Well, why don't we start with the artist side of yourself? How about we start?
The artist. Yeah. Good. I'm glad that you were helped me to narrow it down. So the artist side of myself, in terms of what I do, and that is actually, I believe, the most important part of myself, because the artist part of myself, musically, or in terms of artistry, painting, or in terms of gardening, or in terms of cooking, or in terms of singing, is the most important part of who I am, because I believe that is the authentic person. That is a person with no filters. I'm allowed to be happy. I'm allowed to be sad. There's no judgment in art. Yeah. And so when I sing a song or write a song or paint a painting or out gardening or cooking food, that's just an expression of who I really am. And I don't have to filter it with what are people going to think. I can just pour everything out. If this is not going to sound very Christian, and for those who might, and even me having to preface that, I got to stop doing that. When I'm pissed off, I like to do art. I'm going to be very, very painfully real. I hope that didn't offend anybody that I said the word pissed off, but that's just who I am.
I use expressive language all the time, Cora. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Because there are those within certain communities that have a mindset of what they think I should be and who I am. I think let's first start with the art and the spirit, I think is really important. Who I am is as a Black woman who loves God, as a Black woman who's an utter Jesus freak, but a hater of the system. And I wonder, because I seem to love people that hate systems quite a bit, as you could probably tell. And so sometimes it's even hard for me to identify when somebody asks me the question, who are you and what do you do? I have to really think about who I authentically am versus the picture other people would want me to be. So in terms of art and my relationship with God, I think those are the two most critical, important things about me, because I believe as human beings, we are wired to express and to feel. And unfortunately, because of the systems, whether they are religious systems, whether they are colonialized systems, whether they are policing systems, school systems, we're trained as human beings to deny the art. I have a feeling that all of us have artistry in us, because I believe that our creator is the master artist, right? And so our systems have taught us to deny and tap into that creativity, because we're told in school, you have to learn this to be this. You have to be this to be this. You have to feel this to be this. And we're given a set of rules of instructions that this is what's acceptable and this is what is not acceptable. And so for people like me that are visionaries and creators, we have a hard time fitting into systems. And I believe Jesus himself had the worst time fitting into systems. Oh my God, did he ever? So it's really important to me to have that space of being able to express my anger, my frustration, my love, my passion, my joy without judgment. And so for me as an artist, as a singer, I love the fact that music allows me to do that, that I can write what I feel and express that. And that's one area that I'm not going to be judged, because music is art. If I paint an abstract painting, I'm not going to be judged, because that's abstract art. If I express myself in certain mediums, it isn't criticized and critiqued, because it's art. And so there is something about being able to heal and express your authentic self through that. So part of who I am as an artist, as a singer, as a writer, as a creator, I believe that we all have that, but we have been taught to deny that.
Yeah, there's an interesting piece there. And even within the way we identify ourselves and how we identify, and having the room and space to be our true selves,
That's right.
There can be a great tension around that, because perhaps because of the expectations we're raised with, the way we're told we need to fit in. And I'm even noticing, like, for you as a person of great faith, I am not a person, like, I have faith, but it's not in any religious system in the world.
Right.
But it's
and you know what? I love that you said any religious system in the world, because I am of the same. I have no faith in religious systems. I have faith in my creator. There's a difference. And so I get a lot of opposition within the community that I'm in of faith, because of my radical belief in being like Jesus. And being like him means that we move away from those systems and move into a true heart and expression of worship and loving God. And so I like him, because he had a lot of opposition. I tend to have the opposition from religious people who don't understand me, because there's a mindset that you should dress away, talk away, be a certain way. I'm a woman, I'm outspoken, I might even be considered somewhat of a feminist. I might be considered too loud, too opinionated, too expressive, too emotional, too honest, too truthful. And all those things God loves about me, but all those things people who are, and I'm not angry at them because they don't really know any better, people who are unable to be authentic to their true selves don't relate. So
that brings up a really interesting thought about, the love we have of others, whether it's other human beings in our community or our creator, whoever that creator might be, or no creator. There is a sense of that emerges from a place of love of self. And I feel like having that relationship with yourself it can be anyways where that authenticity comes from. Can I ask you, like, would it be okay to ask you about that journey for you, loving?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad you did ask that. If you can hold for a second, because I was boiling my coffee before coming on here and I'm worried I might burn down my house. Hold on for 1 minute.
So I'm gonna hang out here while Cora gets a coffee and I'm gonna vamp a little bit.
Okay.
Oh no, there. Back.
Nope, I'm back. I'm sorry. So I'm glad you answered. I just turned the stove off because that's a pivotal question. Okay, so I had this conversation with a good friend, sister, and ally, Heather, who I asked to be on today, and she said she'll have to log in maybe later. But I realized through this COVID-19, crisis for others, but blessing for me in a really weird way, that I needed to really dig deep in terms of the self-love. An example of that would be when I made the decision in the early part of COVID-19. I come from a wellness background, so as well as being an artist, a recording artist, a producer, an orator, an activist, what am I? A coach. Some would call me minister. I don't like the title minister. I really don't, because there are expectations that come with that I just don't want to deal with. But I knew that I wasn't living to the fullest authentic person and self that I could be. Because of the trauma, because of the wounds, because of the various experiences I've been through, I have struggled quite a bit with my own sense of who I am versus what other people think I should be. And really understanding that it's okay to be me. COVID hit and I decided, because I know from my nutrition background, I knew that I was not honoring my temple the way I need to. Although I'm a coach and although I've been, training for bodybuilding competitions and, done all these various things with the fitness community, when COVID hit, I went from the shift of fitness to wellness. There was a shift. There was something that happened there, because for me, it was like, I don't want to die. So I want to eat well and I want to rest well and I want to make sure I live. So in the process of elimination, in thinking about what I need to do to stay healthy, what do I need to do to build my immune health? I knew right away, because of my fitness background, that milk and dairy and meat and certain things was not going to help in terms of my physical well-being. So I made the decision that I was going to first be pescatarian, and that was going to be like a 21-day sort of cleanse thing. And then there was no access to hairdressers, and then there was no access to certain things. So what started happening, I'm going to share this with you, is a creamy crack, which, okay, so I got to share this with you. So I have been chemically processing my hair since I was 13, 12, turning 13. I could almost cry thinking about this. This is where we get really emotional about my Blackness and the shame that I've had to carry as a Black woman. And and I've always chemically processed my hair. And so COVID hit and there was no way to really access what I needed. Well, I could have accessed, but I decided I'm not going to. I'm just going to wait until, everything opens up. Sally's hair wasn't open, and so I couldn't go in and buy what I needed to. And usually I do my roots like everyone else. And I would do that religiously for years. Every 12 weeks, it would be the roots getting relaxed, even though these chemicals are possibly making me die. But this is part of the thing that I did to sort of fit into that culture that I was talking to you about. Yeah. And when this whole thing hit and my new growth, which is about this much of my own natural hair, grew in, I literally found myself afraid. This is going to sound so ridiculous because I am Black. I felt afraid in that, what do I do? Do I relax or do I let it grow out? I mean, it was that weird. Mm. And then I was like, why am I afraid of my own hair? Why am I ashamed of my own hair? What's really behind this, Cora? Is this your hair or is this you? And I had to really look into that. And our world has been so busy and my life has been so busy because as a kid, my mom relaxed my hair so she could manage it. And the other thing you need to know is that my mom is a very, very light-skinned woman. My dad is a very dark-skinned man. So we can talk a little bit about colorism as well. There's racism, there's colorism, wow. And so I grew up as a first-generation Canadian with the idea that my Blackness was not acceptable, even within my own culture. So if we put aside racism, there's colorism. So I would see how people would respond to my very light-skinned mom and my very dark-skinned dad, and there were differences in how my dad was treated versus my mom. And my father was almost elevated because he had a light-skinned wife. So me as a dark-skinned child, this is so weird, I had a lot of shame. I automatically believed that being dark-skinned and Black was ugly, was unacceptable, was something that you wanted to. If I could bleach my skin enough, if I could straighten my hair enough, if I could put in blue contacts, if I could do something, if the way I spoke had no traces of West Indian or African or anything, if I could deny my culture, then that would mean I could assimilate with the system that I'm currently in. And so the song Black Rose, the movement, it's all a part of me evolving and an awakening of who I am as a Black woman. And so when COVID hit and the creamy crack started to grow out, that's a nickname Black people give relaxers, I realized that I was inadvertently hating a part of myself. And that's my African roots. That's my African curly, woolly, rebellious hair.
Or just
it's rebellious. It's not manageable. It's not manageable. It's rebellious. So you got to tame that, right? And so I was like, what in the heck? And it started growing out in these cute little curls. And I literally one day started crying. This is going to sound a little dramatic. When the new growth, because I haven't seen my new growth I'm 48. So take away 13 years from 48. That's about 35 years of not knowing what I am in my natural state.
So this process, this stillness, slowing down, on top of this evolving journey for you, is also, it's brought you back to a deeper connection with who you are. And it sounds like confronting once again in another way what other people expect you to be in order to just be like us, just be normal, which seems like which is the white perspective, the white way of doing things in our culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is the thing, like, as I was thinking about coming on here, I thought as a Black woman, and I'm sure a lot of Black women have experienced this, whether you're in school, whether you're going to university, whether you're applying for a job, having dreadlocks or natural hair could be considered too wild, too untamable. And that is basically the perception of Black people. It's perceived that we don't have emotional intelligence, that we are angry, that we are belligerent, that we don't have order, that we're uneducated. I mean, clearly those stereotypes shouldn't be out there, but the reason that there's Black Lives Matter marches and protests and people angry is because there's been years of that kind of oppression. And even within our communities, our families, because of the generational trauma and what they've been taught, there's even within our community, particularly the Caribbean, not maybe, I don't know so much for the African, but the Caribbean communities, there is this colorism, you know, that lighter is better than darker. And so for many of us who are dark-skinned Black women, you have the layer of systemic and anti-Black racism, you have the system, and then within them. So if your hair isn't straighter, if your skin isn't lighter, if your eyes aren't blue, there's this level of beauty, and then there's this level of beauty. So for me, when COVID hit, I really had to tap into who I am as a Black woman. And I don't know if you noticed the posts. There's posts with no makeup. There's posts with sweaty selfies. There's posts with me going, this is who I am, because me transitioning from the processed foods and the processed hair, oh my God, the processed relationships, and all that is toxic and superficial, because I've been in isolation. It's just been me and God. There's been this wonderful sort of metamorphosis and this wonderful change in me developing love for myself. And bottom line is this: there's one scripture that I love so much that Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, it turns out that for 48 years, there wasn't that self-love. And so I'm feeling like COVID happened in some senses. It's a terrible, awful thing, but it gave me the opportunity to grow in that.
Wow. And that, the turning inward, the looking, I mean, I'm hoping that we're all doing that to a certain extent, right? Examining a lot of stuff inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The thing for me is I started having to think. You have to think about things like, why do I process my hair? Why do I eat meat? Why do I eat processed foods? What, like, having to really connect with, why am I doing the things that I'm doing, and becoming a critical, independent thinker? Because I think one of the things that happens to us is that we become brainwashed into believing that we have to have the ideals of the masses, and that we're not allowed to be an independent thinker. One of the things that happened, and you and I have had this conversation, is, you know, and I have to preface this, I love what Black Lives Matter is doing. I love what's happening around the world. I love the advocacy. But just because somebody's doing a march doesn't mean I'm going to show up, right? And just because someone starts a movement because it's a cool thing to do, I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves why. And, you know, in this COVID crisis, I was able to really tap into, like, do I want to eat traumatized, beaten down animals? If I say I have love, how in the world could I partake in the abuse of this animal? Because Jesus himself says he feeds the birds in the air. God has compassion for the birds to give them worms. So what am there's so many contradictions, and I just go, he loves the birds, man, the birds. He's like, I want the bird to have the worm to eat. Why are we beating pigs and punching cows in the head and mass farming and, again, processed, right? Instead of letting the cow just eat the grass, you have them shoved up. It's so, and people are so blind to the choices that they make that I'm hoping that COVID is a time where we can stop and think, what, or do you know what's on your plate? Do you know what you're eating? Do you know what you're ingesting? You know, when you watch the news or when you're listening to music, are you really paying attention to the subliminal messages that are going in your subconscious
Well,
mind?
that's something like the conversation about turning inward and examining ourselves and the differences, you know, between the doing that is externalized and the doing that is internalized, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
this process that I'm hearing from you about this deep recognition and getting to know yourself in a deeper way, that's helping you give a clearer view of what's happening in the world. And I can relate a little bit to that in the sense that this time has also provided me with opportunities to reflect and really untangle some difficult stuff, some that I
Mm-hmm.
haven't really had the time to think about before. And
Right.
I'm hoping that folks are doing the same, because a rally is a wonderful thing. Now let's continue the work and back it up. Let's keep doing the work. Speaking for cisgendered white like settlers like myself, like it's time for action. It's time. If it has been time for a long time.
You know what I believe? I believe that all that's happening in our world, COVID-19, Black Lives Matter rallies, all this stuff is pent up junk that's already been there. And I believe that God in his mercies, like, pay attention. You've been destroying the earth that I gave you. I gave you this to entrust it to you, and you allow money and profit. You systemic, I think that he is like, pay attention. COVID-19, we were shut in, but the animals were enjoying our planet. You know, our planet got a rest from the abuse of what we've done to it. I think that it was a chance for me to go, think about what you're eating, think about what you're saying, think about why you do what you do. And for me, there's been a sense of an awakening in that I realized that when you're thinking about the fact that your life is on the balance and that you could at any time catch a deadly disease and die, I think for me it was like, I don't want to do anything that's going to contribute to the death of my life. So I made a radical decision that I was going to avoid negativity. I maybe go and watch the news for 2 minutes out of the day, and then that's it. I shut it off. Relationships that are toxic, shut it off. Information that's going to make me feel nervous, shut it off. And do my best. And there's the gardening, and there's the positive interactions. At least I try. And then there was this whole unknowing of things that were in me that I didn't know I could do. I didn't know I could redecorate cupboards. I didn't know I could refurbish furniture. I didn't know that I had certain gifts. And so I've encouraged people on my page to join me in, I have a mind, body, spirit challenge happening, and to join me in that metamorphosis, to use this time as a means to grow personally. And so that's kind of where I've been.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So the creamy crack, I was hoping I could show you, but there's this much. I'm so excited today. I got out of the shower and went, oh, I love my curls. So I'm in what's called transition. For those of you that don't know, so transitions, for a Black woman, when you're growing out the relaxed process hair and your new hair is growing in, you've got to be a lot of radical self-care and a lot of conditioning and gentle with your hair so it doesn't all break off. And so there's this new growth, which is curly, and then the rest, which is the process hair, which is straight. So Bantu knots, and there's no blow drying or hot irons or anything like that. It's just your natural state, and that's it. No chemicals, no nothing, and a lot of natural yummy things. And so today, as I was preparing for this, I looked at, oh, I love the curls coming in. And I look at my seedlings and go, oh, my seedlings are coming in. And those are the things that I think that I'm hoping that in the midst of all the mad, awful things that are happening, that we're still finding those beautiful things that are still there.
Can I ask you to share a little bit? So we've mentioned it a couple of times, but can you tell us a little bit more about Black Rose? And how
Black Rose.
came into your life.
You see that? I did this just for this interview today. You see my Black Rose in my hair? Okay. So I know it might be a bit cheesy. So Black Rose. So the movement. It's an expression of who I am, and I needed to write that song. A few years ago, I live in the Bowmanville community, and after my divorce with my ex-husband, I moved out here to start afresh with my beautiful daughters, and moving into a community that I didn't understand. I thought, I'd seen the show. What is it, the show that Oprah did? It was some show where she came into the Bowmanville community, and it just seemed like it was a very nice small town, and people were cool, and I didn't realize that there were challenges and growth that needs to happen within this community. There are a lot of really incredibly nice people. So there's some advantages to small town that are cool in terms of some really kind people, but then with that comes some really not so kind. And I've had a few very traumatizing experiences racially and systemically, not only in this area, but with the police, with as much as CAS has moved forward with the CAS, with educational systems, in trying to rebuild from my divorce. The unfortunate thing about the society we're in right now is there are many biases and barriers that people have to face in rebuilding, especially if you're not of a certain socioeconomic class and race. And so it was evident to me that I was not only dealing with the stereotypes of being in low income, or I might have to move the phone because I think that's my phone ringing and saying that it's about to log off. So I had to deal with the stereotypes of being low income, being Black, and being a single mother. And I had an experience that was not quite nice. And I remember feeling so frustrated at the time because I felt like I can't call the police because the police are not going to arrest someone on the basis of racism. And so I remember penning to paper the words, "I'm the Black rose in your garden. You don't know what to do with me. I'm the Black rose in your garden. You're not going to stomp or abuse me. You see, just sun is shining on my beautiful Black skin, and there's absolutely nothing you're going to do to stop me." And I just remember saying it over and over again, and it felt good. It felt empowering. I thought, well, if no one's going to empower me, I'm going to empower me. I was just surrounded by so much confusion and so much hate and so much accusation. And so went into the studio, recorded the song, did the harmonies on the song, went in there, and I said to the person I was working with at the time, this is exactly what I want. This is exactly the sound that I want. The fortunate thing is, in terms of the rhythm, my dad had done some work in Jamaica, so he came back and said, hey, you know what? I want you to go ahead and record on this track, and that's what I did. And it was done in a very short span of time. And then, I decided with the people, the powers that be in the music industry who weren't happy with the fact that I uploaded that for free. And I made the decision that I don't want people to pay for this song. I don't want that. I want people to download the song, understand the movement, use this as a tool to just bring awareness. Because at that time, when you spoke about systemic or anti-Black racism, it was like going on deaf ears. It was almost like, you've got issues, Cora. I would speak to pastors, I would speak to community leaders. It would be either you have issues or you're emotional, or it'd be the all lives matter mantra that we tend to, and I'm like, please don't go there. So I remember having Facebook posts. One person was like, you're constantly in turmoil. And, they would condemn, and why are you always in turmoil? Why can't you just be quiet? Why are you always emotional? And so at the time, when it kind of wasn't cool to be Black Lives Matter, right? I was out there saying, this is my experience as a Black woman. And so it was easier for me to communicate my feeling in song than I could in conversation, because the conversations 90% of the time were not people like yourself that were willing to listen and go, let me see how I feel about this. Let me give her the space to express how she feels. 99.9, unfortunately, percent of the spaces, whether in the educational system or the judicial system or the policing system, or even in terms of friendships and even the church. Yes, I will say the church. The church is a big, huge place that would speak a lot about God, but has very, very little understanding as to cultural appropriation and sensitivity, cultural sensitivity, understanding. And so I found it very hard to communicate my pain while I was going through it with people. So I found it easier to do that in music, and that was where Black Rose came from. When I recorded it and decided to upload it to Reverb Nation, there wasn't a lot of promo. I didn't do a video. I didn't do a, press shoot with pictures. I just uploaded it and thought whoever wants to download it will download it. And I'm hoping that that will open up the discussion about racism and help people to understand things from my perspective. I got to tell you that it has not been easy, because I've received a lot of rejection. I've received a lot of, she's dramatic, or she's emotional, or they want to put their all lives matter agenda with no real sense of acknowledgement and understanding, and that hasn't been easy. So I'm really happy about the Black Lives Matter movement, but there were people like me doing Black Rose movement and singing our story and speaking our story, feeling a lot of the time like it was going on deaf ears, but still believing and hoping that one day we will be heard somehow, some way. And the challenge with that too is, because of the stereotypes that are out there regarding single Black women, single Black mothers, there were a lot of, oh, she's just angry. She's just mad at her ex-husband, or she's just using this as an excuse, as a crutch. Oh, the race card, she's pulling the race cards. There was a lot of that. And I'm okay with that.
I'm not.
I'm okay with that. I was able to develop some thick skin and go, okay, you know what, but that's not going to stop me, as the song says. So that's where the song came from. I really want to encourage people to download the song, send the song to their friends and their family, tell your radio stations to play it. And the reason why is I love what Black Lives Matter is doing worldwide, and I'm for them. I'm really for them. But what I need to see is, after the protests and the rallies are done, I need to see a movement of action, big A word, action. After the kneeling of our Prime Minister is done, I need to see action. After the confessions of the police chief saying that there are issues in the policing system, I need to see action. So while it's great that we're on this bend the knee protest, and it's necessary to tell the systems and tell the world that there are more of us than there are of you, and I appreciate our allies and I appreciate everything everyone's doing. However, I am hoping that this isn't going on deaf ears. I know right now in the United States, the 3 officers have been arrested. That's good. There's been some positive things that are coming out of these rallies. I'm going to encourage people to keep them peaceful, because we do not want rioting, and we do not want this to turn into someone who's just waiting for an opportunity for confusion to use that for their own advantage. But what I am encouraging our political leaders in particular to do is start putting money where your mouth is and showing our community that you are ready to take action to change the systemic barriers and oppression of both Black and First Nations people. It is just not, a rally for me is not enough.
You, by bringing up Indigenous peoples, you've reminded me of an art piece by Rebecca Belmore, an Indigenous performance artist, a Canadian, and this one very strong piece she did where the central piece is the voice you've acknowledged, that why don't you just get over it, right? And I think for people like myself who want to be a part of making change, we've got to learn how we can be of service. That's a huge piece. And there's lots of out there. There's lots of resources. There's lots of teachings that are already out there and learn from. But I think part of it is acknowledging, being able to see and hear and consider the role that we might have been, that we are playing. Right?
I appreciate that, because I'm wondering if I have to almost be careful, because I deal with so many community leaders and people in the community. I never ever want to offend anyone, but I heard this well-meaning person, talk about, making sure that, in all of this, we're keeping our hearts clean and peaceful and not letting anger rule us. And I so love and appreciate their leadership and their role in my life as a leader and as a mentor. But one of the things that, and that is pretty much, I think, the conversation that needs to happen with our allies and our white brothers and sisters. And particularly, I see the need for white politicians and pastors, I'm going to put pastors in there, is the understanding regarding cultural sensitivity. You cannot expect people to get over intergenerational trauma and pain. You cannot tell people that they are not allowed to be angry. We need to really rethink what we're saying, because these leaders have to acknowledge that their prosperity and their privilege has rested on the backs of oppressed Black men, women, and First Nations people. And when the real revelation and understanding of the systemic oppression that has benefited them, that has caused them to be able to live wealthy. One of the discussions that people have is, well, we all came as immigrants. Jamaicans came, Irish people came, Indian people came, Jewish people came, all these different nations came. Why is it that the Black community is the one that is crying racism, racism? Why isn't anyone else? And I said, because our sons and our children have to face barriers that other communities do not have to face. And I say that as an example would be, if I happen to be a young Black woman or a young Black man, and I am waking up having to put on an armor that says, okay, today I'm going to face possible racism from my teacher. Today I'm going to possibly be judged by a neighbor. Today I'm possibly going to be pulled over by the police. And today I'm possibly going to deal with someone judging me because of the darkness of my skin. So that armor has to be on, that this is what I potentially am going to face today. Whereas our white counterparts don't have to deal with that, at least within the systems that we're living in on the consistent basis that we as Black people have to face. And I said to someone who I love very much and had to have a hard conversation with yesterday, that you cannot say that Black people have to teach their children values. There because what you're not understanding is that Black people don't have the privilege and the right that you have. The doors that are open for your son or your child, the barriers that a Black person has to face versus what you will have to face are very different. And then you add that person coming from a single parent family, that person living in low income, that person being a latchkey kid, on top of oppression in the school, oppression with the police, oppression from their neighbor. They're dealing with oppression from various different angles. And the way our system is designed, there is nobody advocating for that person. So the other issue that I have, and we talk about the police, and while I have police friends that I love very much, one of the things that I don't like is that their training desensitizes them from that sensitivity in understanding that you're dealing with somebody else's son. When you look at a Black kid who's 14 or 15, you can't see a kid that wasn't raised properly. You need to see a kid that does not have the resources that your kid is going to have. And the empathy and the compassion and the understanding and the need for, sociology courses. You need to understand Black history. You need to understand sociology. You need to understand the psychology of a Black child and a Black woman. Because if you're out there and you're having a knee-jerk reaction to something that can be diffused very easily, this is the reason we're in the situation we're in right now. Black people are not cattle. We're not animals. And I would almost question that the industries, whether it's the court system or the policing system, is it a system or is it an industry, like the food industry, pharmaceuticals, like whatever? Is it that you've made money and you have feeding your family off of the oppression of people? Because it sounds to me like your training is, in fact, designed to oppress certain groups of people. And at some point you have to acknowledge and recognize that. So the issue that I have in the movement, and the issue that I think Black Lives and many other that are advocating for the rights of Black people, is that if you're a pastor, if you're a political leader, you have to, number one, do not tell people to get over it. What you need to do is look at it from the lens of what it is and stop the denial of the issue, right? Stop the, well, get over it. Well, forgive. Well, guard your heart. Well, you know what? No. I understand psychology, and I understand that there are 4 stages of grief. And I understand that anger is one of those stages. You have to let people be angry, and you have to let them express that anger. Because if they don't, then it becomes something it shouldn't. Then the anger turns to rage, and rage turns to something else, and then we don't want to go down that path. But part of grieving is anger. And what I feel like as a Black woman is that I somewhat resent, and I mean that, resent white leaders telling me how to feel right now. It makes me feel like you still don't get it. And I need to be able to allow to post when I'm, pissed off. I need to be able to open my mouth and speak when I'm hurt. I need to be able to say to my leaders and allies and friends, hear me when I say that this is pent up frustration for 48 years. And you need to be prepared to allow me the space to grieve. Stop telling me and giving me timelines as to when you think I should be healed or when you think I should be whole, because you are sitting in your privileged seat because of my oppression. And you have to recognize that. So the things that have to happen in terms of reconciliation, if there ever is going to be that, is that our political leaders can't just bend a knee they're going to have to, however many years it's going to take, for us to heal, our political leaders are going to have to let that happen and give us the space to, excuse me, be pissed off, okay? Be upset, cry Black Lives Matter, grieve, yell, shout, and go, yeah, we get it. And then there has to be that allowed space. Then there has to be action put in place. So the policies that have to be put in place. And then there has to be that reconciliation. We're with you, right? So for the leaders and for the allies within the community, as a Black woman and what I do in Black Rose Movement, I would ask that our allies give us the space to heal, because our communities have been traumatized by abuse for hundreds of years. This is generational pathology that's being passed down, and abuses that have gone on for hundreds. But if we're going to just talk about policing for right now, if we're not going to talk about the public and appeal and district school boards, we're not going to talk about, judicial systems. If we just talk about policing, there's going to have to be some level of accountability and a space for the community to heal. So,
and Cora,
yeah,
because we're nearing the end, and soon Instagram will time.
Oh my gosh, the 40 minutes is almost done. I can't believe that.
This is so important. These conversations are so important, and being able to find ways to listen to one another and have these kind of conversations is so important. If people, you're very open, you're someone whose heart is out there, you want to engage in these conversations. If people are interested in connecting with you further about this, is there a way people can?
Absolutely. So currently, I have a Facebook page, so Black Rose Movement. I should change it to Black Rose Movement Durham, because I do a lot of the work in Durham and Clarington. Then I'm going to invite everybody to go on the Reverb Nation page. So if you just pull up Cora, Reid, and Black Rose in Google, it'll automatically lead you to Reverb. The song is free, and I want you to go in and just download the song, send it to all of your friends, then go on the Facebook page, like the Facebook page. You're welcome to coming on my personal page, because I kind of use my personal page interchangeably. And then I just I just ask my friends and allies to just join me in the fight. I do a lot of work behind the scenes that I don't really talk about. So instead of the picketing, I'm on the phones probably like 8 hours a day, talking to political leaders, talking to people in the community, trying to make change that way. I'm not as vocal in my protest. I'm kind of the action person behind the scenes, going, okay, let's do this right here, right now. I want to talk to the leaders, and I want to figure out how we're gonna make the things happen that need to happen. So I'm going to invite people to download the song. Just go pull up Cora Reid, Black Rose, Google it, and it will bring you to the Reverb Nation. And go on and download the song for free and listen to it. Send it to, what would be a great blessing for me is if you know anybody that is a, two things that people can also do. Download the song. The other thing that people can do is, I think I might have to recommend books to read, and maybe Mary, you can help me with this. I know one good book for our allies would be White Fragility, and other materials to learn a little bit more about seeing things from the lens of a Black person and understanding how systemic and anti-Black racism works, taking that extra step to learn. So getting books that will teach you is going to be very important. And the third thing that people can do is, if you're going to do the protesting and marching, it's also very important that you connect with organizations like Black Rose Movement, or, you know, the organizations within the community that are not only picketing, but are moving. They're movement. Because as it relates to elections, as it relates to policies, we can march all we want, but if we don't have definitive policies in place to hold systems accountable, okay, then all this marching and talking is in vain. So I'm going to encourage people to get on Black Rose Movement Facebook. I should have one for Instagram. I don't. That's a good idea. I think I should get on that. I should get on that and download the song for free and send it to as many people as you can.
Cora, thank you so very much for joining us today. And let's share this. We'll continue. If you want to send resources, anything that you know of Cora that you love, I can post it on the Living Room's Facebook page.
Okay.
I'll reshare some of this that we've been sharing throughout these last few weeks.
All right. All right. Well, you know what? I'm hoping if you would be open to this, maybe, because this was so fast, maybe we can have, this could be a part one of many parts of a discussion on what I'm doing, because I want to include you in that. You're my girl. I'm wondering if this could be part one of many parts, and we just continue to consistently reconnect, that this isn't the end. It's a new beginning.
Let's talk. Let's do that.
Let's talk about that. Okay.
Conversation going.
All right. I would love that. I love you so much. And I'm sorry, I wanted to show pictures.
You know what? There's more art to talk about. And we'll start with the song. And next time we'll revisit, you know, there's so much that you do. And thank you for sharing so much of your experience with us today. I feel really honored, really privileged to have had you.
Thank you, love. Thank you for always supporting me. And thank you, Mary. Before I go, Living Room. You're my church. You're my church, and that Living Room taught me. I don't know that you know how really special you are, love. I don't know that you know how much God uses you to touch the world. And I know you're not religious, but I seem to think you are. I should call her Saint Mary. I know she hates when I do that. I call her Saint Mary. I know you hate it. Please don't. But you've given so many people the opportunity to express, and I've taken those skills from the living room, and that's what I'm doing in this challenge, is healing through expression, through cooking, through painting, through singing, through gardening. And thank you for giving me that gift. I remember the first day before we go, I know I talk a lot, and I walked in and I couldn't believe art was for free. I thought, nobody does anything for free. And my children and I have that space. That was a space that we went to when we were afraid and when we didn't really know what to do. And so I want to thank you so much for that, my love. Love you back.
Talk soon, hon.
Okay. Now I'm going to cry.
I'll say goodbye to you, the fabulous Cora Reid, for now. Take care of yourself.
Love you so much.
Go enjoy some.
I will. Thank you so much, love. You too.
Bye.
We'll talk soon. Bye, hon.
Bye. Here we go. Oh, guys. So thank you for hanging in. It's almost 3 p.m. We'll be cut off soon, but thank you for joining us. Thanks for hanging in. And thank you to Cora Reid for joining us. Come on over to the Facebook page to check out some of the resources we're sharing there, to learn more about how you can actually make a difference and start that difference by changing yourself, because that's how it begins, folks. We change ourselves. We can't wait for other people to make the changes. We start with us. So love you loads, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and see you again soon. We'll be back here next Tuesday for another Instagram live stream chat too. So see you then. Bye, everyone. Take care.